Looking back, I never imagined that the worst casualty of my time overseas would be the life I left behind. You expect the danger on a deployment, but you never expect to come home and find your own house occupied by a complete stranger who is wearing your clothes. That was the exact reality waiting for me when I unlocked my front door after 10 long months away from everything I loved. The silence inside the house was the first thing that made me uneasy, but the shoes by the entrance confirmed my worst fears. My journey with Amanda started over a decade ago when we were just ambitious college students with big dreams. We built a life based on what I thought was absolute trust, navigating the long separations that came with my military career. She was my anchor during those cold, lonely nights in foreign lands, and her letters were the only things that kept me grounded. I worked myself to the bone to provide a comfortable life for her, believing every single promise we made to each other before I deployed. Everything started shifting during the 8th month of my deployment when her phone calls became short and detached. She always claimed she was exhausted from work, but a husband knows when the woman he loves is pulling away into the shadows. The warmth in her voice completely vanished, replaced by an awkward coldness that made my chest tighten with anxiety. I tried to convince myself that the distance was just playing tricks on my mind, but deep down, I knew a storm was coming. The breaking point arrived unexpectedly when my deployment ended 2 weeks early, and I decided to surprise her without calling ahead. Walking into our home, I noticed a strange jacket on the coat rack and heard unfamiliar voices drifting from the master bedroom. When I pushed the door open, I found Amanda sitting on our bed with a man named Julian, who was casually pouring coffee into my favorite mug. The sheer audacity of the scene frozen before my eyes made the breath completely catch in my throat. Amanda scrambled to her feet, her face turning pale as she stumbled through a series of pathetic excuses about Julian just being a supportive friend. Julian looked terrified, quickly realizing that he was trapped in a room with a man who had just returned from a combat zone. I did not scream or throw punches, because the intense anger inside me had instantly crystallized into a cold, calculated clarity. They both watched me in absolute silence as I calmly walked out of the house to process the betrayal. Instead of demanding answers from a liar, I spent the next 48 hours quietly gathering undeniable proof of their extensive affair through shared bank accounts and phone records. I discovered that Amanda had been funding Julian's failing business using the hazardous duty pay I earned while dodging mortar. The realization that my sacrifice had financed their secret romance burned hotter than any betrayal I had ever experienced in my life. I knew right then that a simple divorce would never be enough to settle this score. My legal counsel helped me freeze our joint accounts and secure the house title before Amanda even realized what was happening behind the scenes. When I finally confronted her at a local diner, I handed her the divorce papers along with a detailed spreadsheet of every single dollar she had stolen from our future. She broke down in tears, begging for a second chance and blaming her weakness on the overwhelming loneliness of the military lifestyle. I simply looked at her, seeing right through the manipulation that used to blind me. The final confrontation occurred when Julian attempted to contact me to apologize and minimize his involvement in the destruction of my marriage. I met him outside his office and calmly informed him that his employers would soon receive a full disclosure of his financial misconduct regarding Amanda's funds. The color drained from his face as he realized his precious reputation was completely destroyed because of his selfish choices. I walked away from him without saying another word, leaving him to drown in the consequences of his actions. The courtroom battle was short and decisive because the evidence of her financial infidelity was completely overwhelming to the judge. Amanda lost her claim to the house and was ordered to repay a significant portion of the funds she misappropriated during my deployment. Watching her leave the courthouse alone was a bittersweet victory, but it finally closed the painful chapter that had consumed my life. I was officially free from the web of lies that had holding me hostage for months. Now I sit on my porch, watching the sunset over a neighborhood that finally feels peaceful again. The house is quiet now, but it is a clean silence filled with the promise of a completely fresh start. I learned that loyalty cannot be bought with sacrifice, and some people are only faithful when it is convenient for them. I survived the betrayal by standing tall, and I am stepping into my future knowing that the truest honor belongs to those who keep their promises.